Christian usury. With this as background, it is time to turn to that practice which is euphemistically known as the Christian Stewardship Program. It has many facets and many practitioners. It involves virtually every Protestant denomination. It involves mission societies, institutions of Christian learning, medical aid societies, and Christian charities. Almost any denominational magazine will contain, in any given issue, several appeals for loans of various kinds. There is one contemporary magazine, the official publication of a supposedly reformed denomination of 250,000 members, that runs almost a dozen such advertisements every issue. When I began to gather data on these stewardship programs, I sent out requests to various Protestant organizations for booklets, charts, or other information. The data poured in, and always by first-class mail. Personal letters were sent, and every letter offered to supply further information on request. Then came the telephone calls and the personal visits by, quote, stewardship, end quote, expediters. I had 2 such visits within a month, and I live in an isolated part of a town that is many miles from the offices of the men who came by to talk to me. In my first 10 years as a Christian, I had 1 visit from a local church's elders. That was initiated by the request of the denomination's multi-millionaire, who insisted that they visit me. I was not home at the time, and they never returned or phoned. But the interest that was shown to me when I inquired about stewardship, I was a man whose Christian soul needed the uplifting experience of true Christian fellowship. An 80-mile round trip was not too far to drive. One would almost be led to conclude that God was wrong, that we can serve God and mammon. It is almost as if God had said that he came that men might have profits, and that they might have them more abundantly. Indeed, here were men who were really involved in full-time Christian service. What surprised me initially was the remarkable similarity of these programs. The tax laws apparently create this uniformity. Some of these programs use the very same pamphlet, but with their own name stamped or printed on the folder. They offer the prospective steward many ways of giving. Here are a few of the titles of the brochures: Faithful Stewardship Through Christian Investment, World Vision, Christian Living, Stewardship Giving, Inseparably Linked, Christian and Missionary Alliance, Effective Giving Through Gift Annuities, Bible Study Hour. The grotesque link among investment, stewardship, and giving is so open, so incredibly blatant, that it should shock the sensibilities of all Christians. Obviously, it doesn't. A confusion of biblical categories so thorough, so willful, and so profitable financially in the short run would be difficult to match. The supposedly conservative Orthodox denominations and ministries are right back in the roaring 20s world of Bruce Spartan, where Jesus could be considered seriously as the founder of modern business. Usury, in its biblical definition, involves the loaning of money to the needy brother and then demanding a repayment of principal plus interest. The question then arises as to the status of the institutional church. I assume that it has already been established that this institution is not to be regarded as a profit-making business. Therefore, to demand the payment of interest by a church for any kind of loan offered to it is a usurious demand. The hierarchy of the church is equally guilty, for the Bible makes it plain that it is immoral to enter into such a transaction either as lender or borrower. Jeremiah chapter 15, verse 10b. The institutional church must be regarded as a charitable ministry, something to be supported by the tithes and offerings of its members. It is not comparable to a corporation. It is not to be financed through the sales pitches of hucksters who offer misleading hopes to elderly couples, as I intend to demonstrate, and who offer them usurious contracts, guaranteed annual returns for life, or any other of a multitude of schemes dreamed up by insurance companies and congressional tax committees. Interest may be taken from businessmen who need to raise money to launch some hopefully profitable enterprise. Interest becomes, biblically, usury when it is taken from charitable, legally non-profit firms that are not operating in a competitive market in order to increase revenues, but which are, in fact, distributing revenues in the name of God. Stewardship is undoubtedly involved in the support of the church and its appendages, but it is the stewardship of charity rather than the stewardship of a profitable calling. To transfer the concept of the stewardship of business to that of charity, thereby justifying usurious loan contracts, is nothing short of blasphemy. He who accepts such a loan is as guilty as he who offers it. The request for loans to support the work of the church is legitimate in times of emergency, just as the appeal is valid for an impoverished individual. It is not legitimate otherwise. But an appeal for a loan at interest is always usurious, always immoral, and always under the curse of God if it is made in terms of the need for charity. Men can shut their eyes and stop up their ears, but that is what the Bible affirms. There is no escape from the truth. God only delays the judgment. The issue of the so-called life income contracts is more difficult to assess, at least for the person who has not had some training in economic theory. Consider the booklet published by charitable giving publications and distributed by a leading conservative seminary and the Bible Study Hour. It is written by Robert Sharp. The seminary version is dated 1967, and the Bible Study Hour version is dated 1968. It presents the case for gift annuities. These contracts involve the payment of a lump sum in cash. The institution uses these funds, and it pays the investor a stated annual return in dollars until he dies. On his death, the remaining money in the fund, if any, goes to the surviving husband or wife, or else it goes to the institution, depending on the type of contract signed. We are informed by the booklet. You accomplish two main purposes with a gift annuity. First, you make a gift to charity, an educational or other charitable organization. Such organizations must meet certain qualifications for your gift to offer you the tax advantages discussed later. Second, you are providing yourself with a regular and assured income. Both statements are misleading. A gift is a present sacrifice made to a charity or a person without any thought of return. It is not the same, morally or legally, as a legacy after death, as any tax collector will be careful to explain. A gift involves the sacrifice of the living donor, not the sacrifice of his surviving relatives. That, at least, is the biblical idea of a gift. An investment is not a gift either. For example, an annuity may be taken out with a commercial insurance company, a fact admitted in the brochure. Is this to be regarded as a gift to Prudential or John Hancock? Is it not rather a form of risk-taking, with the insurance company betting that you will not outlive the actuarial average life expectancy for someone of your age group and sex? Is the company not betting that the accumulated interest on your money plus the principal will be greater at your death than the payments made to you during your lifetime? If the contracts are the same, why does a person go to church or a missionary organization to make provisions for his lifetime income? Because the church comes to him in the name of the Lord. The church calls his investment a gift, calls his risk-taking charitable stewardship, calls his usury commendable. A commercial insurance organization does not bear the name of Christ, and it must pay taxes on its profits. It is not really so competitive among the faithful as the church's insurance scheme is. Like the money changers, the church's insurance salesmen and loan brokers are inside the temple court. The church possesses that crucial spiritual monopoly, and its administrators have learned that such a spiritual monopoly can be easily converted into a very successful, in the short run, economic monopoly. Is this an exaggeration? Listen to the words of Mr. Stanley L. Bjornson of the Christian and Missionary Alliance in that organization's official pamphlet promoting the Treasures Tomorrow program. We call it Treasures Tomorrow, adapted from Christ's injunction to lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Of course, many financial plans offered by the Alliance provide income opportunities for the near future, others in years to come. All, however, are investments in behalf of God's work, which He has promised to bless. Naturally, these organizations prefer an outright gift to an investment which requires them to repay something to the investor. But donors are not always able to meet the needs of the various organizations, so potential usurers in the audience must be encouraged to embark on a new, more immediately profitable path to, quote, charitable giving, end quote. Ezekiel was no doubt right in his day to condemn such practices, but then he was under law, not grace. We supposedly live in a new dispensation, as Mr. Bjornson indicates. The best gift possible, of course, is the outright gift which comes immediately available for use. However, many Christians yearn to give, but need earnings to live. For them, income-giving gifts, annuities or trusts are preferable and beneficial. It is our sincere desire to serve all who wish to lay up treasures in heaven by giving and investing in the Lord's work today. Christians who play such games with language are laying up something in heaven, no doubt, and perhaps they will be skillful enough to convince themselves, on earth, that the thing being stored up for them is a treasure, but there will come a day of accounting. Whether their stores are treasures or not will be examined by fire. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 12 following. So, the pastors of the flock make usurers of the sheep. In order to gain funds for their kingdom projects, the pastors have turned the house of prayer into a den of thieves, all for a good purpose, of course. The truth or falsity of the Bible's stand against usury is not even a topic for consideration. Men skilled in the most tortuous kind of detailed biblical exegesis, men trained in the original biblical languages, men who can spot a flaw in a creedal formulation in an instant, find themselves unconcerned with the practical issue of usury. That is the blight of antinomian pietism. Precision in things narrowly theological, utter blindness in anything beyond the scholar's footnote. Its product is cultural impotence. The years of studied irrelevance catch up to a church. The pastors are no longer capable of applying biblical norms, even in the narrow realm of the institutional church. The standards of the world of high finance are assumed, a priori, to be eminently transferable to the world of the institutional church. If the tax authorities, once called publicans, grant to non-profit corporations certain tax advantages on annuity programs, that is assumed to sanction the practice in God's eyes. And indebtedness, like a narcotic, is very difficult to abandon once a practice is begun. Those lifetime annuities must be paid off in parts by the financing of more lifetime annuities. That is the modern way. "Owe no man anything but to love one another" is disregarded. That was for first-century Rome, not for modern times. We live in a new dispensation.